Hey everyone, it's Alex and welcome to the Marvel Snap Decks of the Week. As always, with the first week of the season, we're going to be using Untapped-based statistics, collection level 6,000 and above, ranks 70 to 100, in order to kind of capture that climb towards infinite. We don't have enough infinite stats anyway in this first week, and so we're going to be using cube rate-based statistics with a secondary characteristic of win rate in order to determine the rankings. So let's get into it. There's a lot of fun decks to talk about today, one of which is Agent Patriot. Now, you're going to find that both Victoria Hand and the Iron Patriot are going to be making kind of an impact in the meta right now. First of all, they're just seeing lots of play, so lots of good, fun, experimental decks are featuring those two cards because A, they're fun, and B, they're good. And so Agent Patriot here is essentially a pretty interesting take on the idea of using, some core tech pieces like, the US Agent and Cosmo and the Red Guardian, while some value generating pieces like Marvel Boy, which I actually thought was a really cool splash here. Running a 59% win rate and a 0.87 cube rate, this is a pretty cool deck, and I like the idea that it has a very strong early game. I mean, it's just essentially a massive early game deck, but pretty much everything's absolutely banger in the early game here, so I really like the way this plays a lot, and I like the fact that as a closer you have that super reach that Sage provides. It's like, I don't have a 4, 5, or 6 cost card here. It's like, how much can you actually put out in terms of power on turn 6? Well, like, Sage is deceptively very powerful, and in my testing of the deck I found that Marvel Boy was setting up some interesting power levels, resulting in Sage perhaps getting more procs than anticipated. But overall, it's been a deck that's been performing very well, one that I am very happy with in my testing, and I think one that you'll have fun with as well. And that's going to take us to number 9, and it's Doom 2099. Despite the fact that it's no longer the Marvel Rivals season, despite the fact that Marvel Rivals is probably one of the most popular games in the world right now, you're still seeing a lot of Doom 2099 out there. Running a 66% win rate, which is astronomical, and a 0.88 cube rate, it's a good deck. And what I think is really working well here is honestly the fact that it's the kind of deck that does perform very well with just playing singular cards and allowing that Doom 2099 to get the value. Obviously, you have Zabu and Psylocke to get some cheated value with either the Doom 2099 or 3-on-3 or Galacta. Iron Lad also allows you to reach towards the Doom 2099. Lady Deathstrike was a really cool addition to this deck, and I kind of forget sometimes just how fun Lady Deathstrike is as a surprise play in terms of snap equity and stuff like that. Definitely kind of the flavorful splash of this list. And overall, Doctor Doom works very naturally, of course, with Doom 2099. So, there's nothing crazy here. What was kind of surprising to me was the inclusion of something like a Cable. It just seems like pure disruption. And so when I saw this deck, I was like, this is actually kind of a fun cook here. And there's some cards in here that are just like, I don't know, let's just play a Cable. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of cool. I like when decks do that, and obviously the LDS and stuff too. So I really thought this deck was cool to highlight, performing very well, and had some cool things mixed in it. Doom 2099 at number 9. And then we're going to a brand new list that's been making the rounds, and that is a Moon Girl Double Up deck. I can't believe I actually get to say it, Moon Girl Double Up. This is something that Cozy and I talk about all the time on Snapchat. I feel like it comes up constantly. Wow, Moon Girl Double Up. It's got to make an appearance at some point. And here it is. And we got ourselves the She-Hulk there, and I think one of the key components of this deck, of course, is going to be that you're going to generate a ton of value when you Moon Girl into the Black Swan Activate, which lets you play a ton of 1-drops for free, even if you've filled your hand by Moon Girling them and duplicating them, right? I really do like the way this deck plays. I think that the Hit Monkey can get absolutely massive when the stars align. The card that I was like, ho-hum about was Hope Summers, because I felt like with the Black Swan and stuff like that you often didn't need Hope Summers, but if you didn't draw into Black Swan or didn't have the activate kind of out on time, then Black Swan did give you a little bit of additional reach to play some of the 1-drops down and extend your hands, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. And obviously the Hope Summers works well with She-Hulk in the case you're floating energy and things along those lines, and Sunspot, of course, too. Regardless, a really cool deck. It's really exciting to see cooks like this, a completely flat 1 cube rate being earned here, 58% winner, which is a little lower this week, but I think it's also because there's probably a lot of piloting errors, because there's a lot of fun to be had with this deck. But regardless, I think a really interesting list here. Number 8, finally, we get to talk about Double Up. That's going to take us to number 7 here, and nothing fancy. It's Cannonball Clog. Now, Cannonball Clog has been a very consistent deck in the meta for the last 3 months, I guess. 0.98 cube rate. We also have a 60% win rate. it's just a good list. It's just a good list. Nothing has really changed here. When I play this deck and I practice it, I mean, I still love the Titania into Green Goblin play. It's just one of my favorite plays to do. It feels so low risk considering how much clog you're actually doing. When you have Viper out there, you're able to make a lot of magic happen, especially when you consider you're playing Debris and Hoods and stuff like that. And honestly, Cannonball continues to be a very good choice. Now, what made this deck really shine in the prior weeks was the prevalence of Doom 2099. You're not quite seeing that as much anymore. Doom 2099 still being good. I mean, we just talked about him, but he isn't like the 30% meta thing that he was during the launch week he had, and then of course a little bit after there. So this is just overall just a good deck. It's just a good deck, and it makes sense that it kind of came down a bit because it was like literally number 2 the week that Doom 2099 came out, right? It was like the second best deck in the entire game, and so now it's fallen off a little bit, but still doing very well. And there's a good chance you have a lot of these cards because you've obviously there's a couple expensive pieces here, but it's been a very consistent deck for some time, so there's a chance you've stumbled across at least some of them. Now, I put asterisks beside this one, Negative Gore, because it actually has one of the highest cube rates in the entire list, but a very low win rate comparatively. And so it was a weird spot where I'm like, I want to put it at the top because the cube rate's awesome at 1.13 cubes, but at the same time, it's like the win rate, like the other win rates, I got like 63, 64% win rates. This one's at 55, which is still good, but like 7 to 9% lower than some of the top lists. And so I'm like, you know what, I gotta weigh the win rate a little bit here, and so I dropped this down to 6. But honestly, it's still phenomenal. And I think part of the reason why the cube rate's so high is because when you're against a bot, let's be honest, when you're against a bot, it doesn't read negative decks very well. Like, it doesn't read like the super low power output you have. You throw a location with negative, and then like you just don't play on the other one, and they'll snap into you, and then you snap back, and then you stomp them after you Lady Jane them, right? So I think that's kind of the reason why the cube rate's so high, is because it's really good at thieving 8 cubes from bots. And I mean, some of you saying, hey, yo, Alex, like this is supposed to be the top 10 best decks of the week, and you're talking about thief and bots. Well, yeah, you're trying to get to infinite right now, and that's exactly how you're going to do it. By, if you get a bot, you got to fleece them a little bit, right? So this deck probably doesn't hold on to the top, like this, obviously this cube rate at all, but it won't hold on to the top part of the list, given only infinite stats players only. But still, I mean, we saw Negative Gore doing good work throughout the course of Gore's launch week, so it doesn't surprise me that this deck did make a bit of a comeback, and honestly, it's probably underappreciated. Gore is good. Make no mistake. And so it's good to see it's at least doing a little bit of pumping for those bots. Going to number 5 is Lasher Surfer. Now, this is one that flew way under the radar. It's so funny. We actually on the Snapchat, we forgot to even talk about Lasher as a new card release, which is kind of crazy when we did the review. We literally forgot he got released. And it's just funny because, like, you played High Voltage, and I actually loved High Voltage. It was so fun. It was so fun. And anyways, this deck is performing very well. Honestly, Lasher is a straight up good card. It is a good card, and I really like the idea that it plays very well with, like, obviously Silver Surfer. You have the Galacta as well, Gwenpool. There's so many things that do play well with it, and obviously Agony 2, Forge. But honestly, the other thing is like it felt really natural playing it on 2. And then having like the opportunity to play US Agent if you drew it on 2 or whatever. Like US Agent and Lasher give you these 2 locations where you're like, okay, well, US Agent's going to really trade a 4, 5, or 6 there. And then Lasher's going to trade something else in the other location. So it was like they were deceptively powerful cards and really punching above their weight class or their cost for what they were doing for this deck. So really liked both of them here. And just be very cognizant of where you play US Agent because you don't want to play Gwenpool or Galacta on top. But regardless, honestly, super impressed with this deck, having a lot of fun with it. And I do think that Lasher is legit, man. I think Lasher's going to have like a legit place in some of these decks, and not even just Affliction decks. It's just a good card. And so I'm really impressed with it, honestly, especially as a free card that came out for the event. So yeah, Lasher Surfer, 61% win rate at 0.104 cube rate. It's a good one, and it's a new take on Surfer. And then we're going to get into a lot of Wiccan decks. Now, Wiccan is having a really high impact on the meta right now, especially when it comes to the hand gen Victoria hand and the Iron Patriot decks. And here what you have is an Iron Patriot deck that is generating a lot of value. But it's interesting because this deck does not run Victoria hand. It's running Mirage and a Hawkeye Kate Bishop, but it's not actually running Victoria hand. Instead, it's running the Quicksilver, it's running Wiccan, it's running Speed. It's really leaning into the speed side, which I thought was cool. Rocket and Groot, clearly a very good card. It's making a lot of decks right now. With Wiccan comes Alioth. Every time you see Wiccan come down or a Quicksilver come down, in your head, red flag, Alioth is in their deck. Honestly, though, very good deck. And it's not the last time we're talking about Wiccan. Wiccan has been a very consistent card over the last little while. And I think that these new hand generation decks, they're really liking Wiccan because you're able to put down a lot of that generated, those generated cards, which is another approach, right? When Victoria Hand came out, a lot of people were focusing on Devil Dinosaur, which is still awesome, by the way. But with Devil Dinosaur, it's a fallback towards like, well, if you got Victoria Hand out, you want to play some of these cards, right? And I think Wiccan allows you to do that, even though obviously Victoria Hand's not even in that deck, but don't worry, she's going to come up. And then we have this deck here, which is Galacta and Groot. I just like this one a lot. Again, it's another Wiccan shell, so you have that Wiccan Alioth shell, but this one's not running the, the Quicksilver. You do have Kitty Pryde, you have Zabu and Hydration Robert. It's just a good list. And this is going to be a really solid performing Penny Parker deck as well. Honestly, I've actually grown to like Penny Parker. I've kind of grown into enjoying. Rocket and Groot making this deck as well. You got the Soul Tech of the Red Guardian. Shongers, look at that. We got some tech card in here. We got some Shongers and obviously Galacta and the rest. Just a good deck. Running a 65% win rate, which is very, very high. And a full cube 0.05 cube rate. It's a legit list. It's doing well. Once again, no Victoria Hand here, but this is not necessarily Victoria Hand deck, despite the fact that I actually think Victoria Hand would work in a deck like this a little bit, but you'd hope for a little bit more generation. Don't worry, we're going to be talking about Victoria Hand. But regardless, just a solid list coming in at number 3. And now I've talked about it over and over again, but, Ajax is a deck that has so consistently been so high in the meta. And I was thinking to myself, Ajax has been crushing it for so long, especially in PvP, infinite only. Is it still going to hold up against the bots? And yes, it has. A 65% win rate, which is astronomical, and a 1.11 cube. I'm not used to saying the full cubes during the first week of the season. I'm just so naturally used to saying the point part first. But yeah, look at this deck. It's crushing. And it's running Iron Patriot. And it's kind of funny that Iron Patriot just so naturally went into a deck like this because it just has good statted cards. It just does good stuff. And I think that when I was playing this deck, I'd play Nebula into one location and then I would play the Iron Patriot into a different one and then get some value either way. Rocket and Groot trades very well because if you have a 2-3 in the Iron Patriot into a location, you play the Rocket and Groot, and then it becomes essentially a 3-5 in stats. As long as they didn't surprise you with a play there on turn 2, you're almost always winning that. You're always getting the discount on the Iron Patriot. So Rocket and Groot seems to be very good with Iron Patriot. Then you get to move them, of course. But honestly, the deck's just performing well, and it's remarkable how consistently high statted and consistently high performing Ajax has been for some time. Really hoping to see him get into the hands of more players as the card acquisition changes start to come into effect. But regardless, it's a good deck, man. It is a good deck. And that's going to take us to number 1. Deck number 1, guys, as we get on our way there. One thing I should mention, I have never really mentioned this, but I'm going to start doing some more Twitter-based content. So we're going to do things a little differently this week. If you're not following along on Twitter, consider following on Twitter. I know some people don't use Twitter and stuff like that, but if you do, I'm going to leave a link in the description and the pinned comment there. Actually, I did a tweet about I wanted to pick some books to read and stuff. It was really cool to engage in a different way with you guys, the community and stuff like that. And we were talking about reading and different books that you guys would suggest. So it's just fun, a different approach to content and just kind of engaging with one another. And that takes us to number 1, and it is going to be Victoria Hand. I've been talking about Victoria Hand. I love Victoria Hand. And we got ourselves a Victoria Hand Devil Dinosaur deck coming in at a 61% win rate and a 1.15 cube rate. The highest cube rate, a very, very high win rate. It's got Quicksilver, it's got Wiccan, which has come to be expected. But what I really like about it, you got the Penny Parker, you got the Victoria Hand, you got the Devil Dinosaur, the Gore, the Alioth. There's so much happening here. You got the Agent Coulson, the Mystiques. You got so much, and it's a really well-rounded deck. You got the Shongers if you need the tech. And what I like about it a lot is that it leans into Victoria Hand, but also it has you generated a bunch of cards. You got the Devil Dinosaur winning line, but also pretty much almost everything has an on-reveal with the exception of obviously Devil Dinosaur and Victoria Hand themselves, and Quicksilver, I suppose, and I guess Gore. All right, okay. But anyways, you get my point. There are a lot of on reveals here, so Gore does get some kind of some value in and of itself, but also Gore's a good fallback. You play the Gore, then you can Mystique after if you're able to get Gore out early with the extra Penny Parker energy, or with the Wiccan energy, of course. It's just a good list. It's just a good list, and it's crushing it. So if you want to try something, definitely give it a shot. Now, obviously, it has a lot of expensive pieces. This is like one of the most expensive decks possible. I know in the comments people are going to be pissed off. I'm sorry. I'm just reporting on the stats. Don't shoot the messenger, as they say. But this is a really cool list, and so if you have the cards, definitely check it out and give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I truly appreciate you, and we'll see you on that next one.